Without your gallbladder, your body's first line of defense is compromised. Your bile. Once a powerful moat that flushed invaders out is now just a trickle. And guess what? Microbes like SIBO, H. pylori, and parasites are loving it. If you've ever wondered why your gut ever feels off since your gallbladder was taken out, look no further. Like, no matter what you eat, your digestion is sluggish, your belly bloated, and infections keep creeping in. Well, today we're opening the drawbridge and letting you in on a secret the surgeons rarely mention. We're talking rivers turn to swamps, gut soil turns sour, and detox pathways that are more like traffic jams than exits. But don't worry, this isn't just doom and gloom. We're loading you up with actionable steps to rebuild your defenses, from bitter and bile to triphala and dry brushing. If you've ever felt your body became a playground for gut bullies after losing your gallbladder, this episode is for you. It is your rescue mission. So grab your tea, settle in, and let's rebuild your moat, replant your garden, and take your inner terrain back.
Gallbladder gone. Now what? Let's heal from the inside out.
Welcome to Gallbladder Gone? Now what? The podcast for Christian women navigating life after gallbladder removal. Hosted by Jamie McCrivey, holistic nutritionist, wife, boy mum, grandma, and a firm believer in God's design for lasting health. Did you know that over 1.2 million Americans have their gallbladders removed every year, and that the majority of them are women? Even more eye-opening is that all gallbladder issues are digestive issues. And poor digestion is at the root of up to 80% of all disease, including hormone imbalances and weight struggles. While Jamie isn't a doctor and this podcast isn't medical advice, she shares real solutions rooted in research, experience, and God's Word. Let's get practical, biblical, and real, one step at a time.
Thank you again for joining me, friends. So, yes, this is an amazing episode, and this is something that hits really close to home for me. So, many of you have heard my story, but I'm going to repeat it again. When I was at my peak sickest, I just knew something was going on in my body. I knew there was something wrong, and I kept going to doctor after doctor after doctor. Finally, was sent to a gastroenterologist, and the gastroenterologist, without looking at me, maybe he looked at my paperwork before he came in, but it looked like someone handed it to him. He walked in, he glanced at it real quick, and he closed it. And he said to me, there's nothing really we can do for you. There's no problem. And I looked at him, I said, you're telling me there's like this digestive issues, gas, bloating, fatigue, all of this stuff, joints hurting, there's nothing here. And he said, no, you probably just want to take some Pepto. And I remember looking at him, I said, Pepto, like as in Pepto-Bismol? And he said, yeah, it'll settle your stomach. I said, so you're telling me there's nothing I can eat or nothing I can do that will help? And he said, nope, food really doesn't have a lot to do with the gastrointestinal system. And in that moment, I realized I was in the wrong office with the wrong guy. So this is what I wish I had known. And I'm really, really excited to open and unveil this information. Now, before we get started, I just want you to remember that I always have downloads, PDFs, and there's a link in the bio that will give you notes so you don't feel like you have to scramble and write things all the time. I want to make this as easy for you as possible. And so as you go over there, you're going to see lots of freebies to give you, and it's all in one place to make it super convenient. All right, so let's just jump right in. The first reason we are more susceptible to SIBO, H. pylori, and other parasites is disrupted bile flow, which is the first line of defense that is weakened. And I would say it's one of the first because we're also have to make sure that our hydrochloric acid is high enough. So remember when I said when you get your gallbladder out, the gallbladder wasn't the problem. Digestion was the problem. So we have to figure out what messed up in the digestion to start shutting things down. And so often I get a lot of people coming in and they'll think that they have acid reflux, that it's like too much acid. And when I explain to them that they don't have too much, they have too little, they're very skeptical in the beginning because it's a painful experience. But once we start actually making their stomach acidic, they don't need those acid blockers anymore. In fact, they start to feel really good. So rarely, rarely does anyone come in that needs acid blockers. They actually need to bring their acid up. And it seems a little counterintuitive, but I promise you it's the truth. All right, so with this first line of defense that is weakened, we need to, so your gallbladder, again, stores and concentrates that bile and then releases it in these powerful pulses during meals, like these big squeezes of this amazing concentrated bile. But after the removal, it's a trickle and it's not, it's like constant, but it's not, doesn't do it more during meals, less during, it just is, it's a weak and it's does not very effective and it doesn't really kill the harmful microbes. And so all food comes in with microbes, right? There's ones that we want and there's ones that we don't want, but our body can um, target these and keep the good ones and manage the bad ones in an ideal situation. So I want you to think about it like your bile is like a castle's moat. So your body's the castle and you have this moat around you, and that's kind of where the bile is. And it's strong and it's bitter and it's built to keep the enemies out. So without that gallbladder, the moat dries up and the drawbridge stays down. And so what happens is invaders like SIBO and H. pylori and parasites walk right in. They walk right in and they make themselves at home, and then they start to have babies, and we have this whole horrible experience in our castle of being overcome with the enemy. And so the result is without these bile surges, all of these bacteria and parasites and H. pylori don't get properly suppressed. So we always have bacteria. We always have a level of H. pylori and candida and fungus and those things. And our body when healthy, will suppress these and keep them in line. And so without this, we make a breeding ground for these invaders. And so that's something that we don't want to do. So with our first line of defense weakened, we need to have a few things in place. So the couple things that I'm always, always, always talking about is the bitters and ox bile. And this can even be for people who don't yet have their gallbladder removed, that are just kind of struggling. I do have links to my favorite bitters and ox bile in the show notes. And so always, always have these handy. I have some in my purse. I have some up at my cabin just in case. I have they're everywhere. It's kind of funny. So the other thing that we need to do is make sure that we have enough stomach acid. There are ways to test that, and maybe I'll talk about that in a future episode. But we want to have enough stomach acid, hydrochloric acid, to really break things down and clean things up. And so, all right. So with that, before I move on, with the bitters and the bile, this is going to be, there's really no other way to say it. It just needs to become part of your life, right? They're just not optional. Now, the second reason we are more susceptible to SIBO, H. pylori, and parasites is that our digestion naturally slows down. And so what that does is that leads to stagnation and overgrowth. So poor bile flow leads to incomplete fat digestion and sluggish intestinal motility. That means that our intestines that are just supposed to kind of swoop things through start to get tired and slow, and they don't go as fast, right? And so what this does is this creates a perfect environment for bacteria and parasites to get really comfortable and start to multiply. So the idea here is, imagine that your digestion is like flowing water. When bile is strong, it keeps things moving, it keeps things clear, it keeps it alive. But when you take out the gallbladder and then don't help it at all, what we get is that river becomes like a sluggish pond. It becomes very still, it becomes stagnant, and things start to grow and smell. I can tell people who have digestive issues if if they go to the bathroom and they clear the bathroom for like an hour, like it smells so bad in there, that's digestive problems. I could tell if they have bad body odor or bad breath. Those are all signs that we need to get things moving as well. All right, so Hippocrates taught that all disease begins in the gut, and Ayurveda is similar. It says the same thing as well, and that early Greek and Roman physicians warned against digestive stagnation as the root of internal rot and infection. And so, 80 per, Ayurvedic practitioners believe that 80% of disease starts in the gut. So if we can just even fix the gut, 80% of our problems go away, right? And then from there, we can get support where we need support. And that's why I started doing my program, is because I was working with people in a doctor's office for a long time, and it's like I found that if we worked on 7 principles to heal digestion, manage weight, and balance hormones, like that, like they didn't even come back after that. They got the skills, they moved on because these are so foundational yet paramount for healing. And so one of the things that I suggest for keeping that river flowing and reducing stagnation is the first thing is to hydrate. Drinking lots of good, clean, fresh water, herbal teas, fresh juices, things like that will keep things moving. The next thing is there's something called Triphala. Now, some people pronounce it Triphala, but I pronounce it Triphala. And I put this, it's in um, my full script bundle for you that is No Gallbladder Now What supplement bundle that will have all of these things that I'm talking about. And so one of the things I love Triphala for many reasons, but first is it assists in natural internal cleansing, which we all need. It also gently maintains regularity. So it's getting things to move without stomach cramps and without this, squeezing and being uncomfortable at all. And then it also nourishes and rejuvenates the tissues. So I love that. I love that it cleanses, but also goes back in there and rejuvenates the tissues because we just don't need to be depleted all the time. And the last one I would suggest for this is doing castor oil packs. Again, I have a link in the show notes for a castor oil pack that I suggest. And I do mine, like I said, at least 3 to 5 times a week. Um, I just sleep with it. And it helps me sleep better. It helps my digestion. I just love the castor oil pack. Now, the third reason we are more susceptible to SIBO, H. pylori, and parasite infections is because the pH and the microbial terrain has shifted. And that makes the gut more hospitable to invaders. So bile helps maintain proper pH in the small intestines, keeping it alkaline enough to deter acid-loving microbes like H. pylori. Now, without that gallbladder, this buffering system is weakened. So we want to make sure that we strengthen this. So think about it like your gut's pH is like the soil in the garden. If any of you are gardeners, I love gardening, and we need to have balanced soil. So when it's balanced, only good things grow in the gut. After gallbladder removal, the soil turns acidic and goes off balance. And suddenly, the weeds, like H. pylori and parasites, start to take over. And so we need to go back in and we need to balance things. Even gardeners think it's very common to be overrun with weeds, and it's actually, there's a whole biology there that we can talk about in regards to the gut and keeping things very balanced. So that's what we want to do. So what do we do? So ancient healers always used rotation. So they did seasonal herbs and fasting to keep the body clean. And so in Ayurveda, it's always in the spring and the fall, but you can even do it quarterly. right? And so it's something that they constantly had built into the system of eating seasonally with the foods, but also, eating with the sun and cleansing. So we don't necessarily have that. So when I was sick, some of the things that I did, one of the things I used was a product called Biocidin. And Biocidin is very strong antimicrobial and goes in there and kills that bacteria. So I put that in the bundle as well. The other one is, so we want to kill bad bacteria, absolutely. But then we want to build up good bacteria. And I do not have anything for this because I firmly, firmly believe with how easy it is or easy to find getting real fermented foods. And I wouldn't even say from like a natural grocery store. I would either do it yourself or find someone locally who does real, true fermentation because you can get 1 tablespoon a day and it has more microbes than an entire bottle of some of your best probiotics. So it's cheaper, it's better for you. Yeah, there's just so many good things. So some of my favorite fermented foods is I do water kefir, milk kefir, yogurt, and then I also do sauerkraut. And I absolutely, for the longest time I didn't like sauerkraut, but now I found a recipe that I absolutely love. So, so that's one of the things we need to cleanse, but also rebuild. That's the action plan. Okay, the fourth reason we are more susceptible to SIBO, H. pylori, and parasites is our detox pathways can become compromised. I would even venture to say they were compromised before you got your gallbladder out, and this caused being compromised. I don't know how you'd say that. So this is also making you a host rather than a cleanser. So we don't want to be hosts to these little guys. So bile is a major detox pathway for hormones and getting pathogens out and toxins out. And there's absolutely foods that do that and help support. So, but without it functioning properly, our liver and lymph systems get backed up. So we have kind of like the blood. Think of the blood as like the mailman. Mailman goes around, he gives good nutrients all around the whole body. Well, the lymph, think of a little bit like the trash man, right? So when it piles up, it's not good. And so we want our delivery system and our detox system really functioning well. And so toxins, when it's backed up, stays in the system longer and it weakens our immunity. And that's when these um, parasites, they call them opportunistic, right? Because they're looking for any opportunity to grow and thrive. So SIBO, H. pylori, and parasites are opportunistic. And so we need to not give them even the slightest bit of opportunity to go in and grow and create strongholds. And so while your body, like I said, your bile is like a garbage truck of your body, it's carrying out those toxins and hormones and waste. Without your gallbladder, it's like that truck is late, breaks down, trash piles up, and it gives harmful microbes that place to thrive. So we need to put things in place. Like we need to fix up that truck. We need to make sure it's on time, so it can do its job. So there's indigenous healing practices that often emphasize liver gallbladder as central to purification and spiritual clarity. And so this is where they introduce sweat lodges and fasting and bitter herbs used to stimulate bile and detoxify. So the action plan for opening pathways is one of my favorite is saunas. And so saunas, I have a link in the description to save $100 on my favorite sauna. And so it's small. And so like I had it in my RV and it's because it folds up and your head, and then when you're ready to use it, you open it up and your head sticks out and it's the best. And I'll probably do one right after I finish recording this. Um, and if you're a person prone to getting too hot or getting headaches or things like that, then do a sauna and then do a cold shower afterwards. Bring that back down. If you're someone who, and I've met several people like this, will say, "Oh, I don't sweat." If you don't sweat, that means that detox pathway is closed. It's like someone coming up to me and saying, "Oh, I don't pee." That's not a good thing, or "I don't have bowel movements." All of these things need to be open and happening. And so if you're not sweating, then you start out in the sauna for like 15 minutes on really low. And you do that every day. And then you do it until you start to glow. And I remember because I didn't sweat. And I knew it was a problem, but no one else was helping me with it. So I got my sauna, and I remember I did about 15 minutes at about 125. And I kept doing that and doing that and doing that until I started to glow. And I said to my husband, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, look, I'm glowing." And he gets in there and in 10 minutes he's sweating like crazy. But now I do that. Now I can sweat like crazy and get those toxins out and open up those pathways. So it may take a little bit. And so in the beginning, some people don't like the sauna because it overheats them. But if you do it low and slow, I'm telling you, it's amazing. The other thing is I want to talk about is beans. Um, Beans and cruciferous vegetables. Get that fiber, pull things out, move things through. And the last one is dry brushing. And dry brushing will get that lymph. We don't brush hard. You brush like the weight of a nickel or a quarter, right? It's really light. It's this light brush that goes in directions towards the heart. And so those are the four things that make us more susceptible to parasites like SIBO, H. pylori. Um, the first line of defense is weakened. The digestion slows down, that leads to stagnation and overgrowth. The microbial terrain shifts, the pH balance shifts, and then the detox pathways become compromised. And so I have absolutely put everything in the show notes. So this is a wrap on today's episode. And again, if you want the resources, PDFs, extra videos, just go ahead to the link in the show notes. And um, if you are ready to stop guessing and actually put all of this into action and be less frustrated and finally get your digestion, hormones, and weight under control, join my DIY course, 7 Principles to Heal Digestion, Manage Weight, and Balance Hormones. Now, there is 20 hours of relatable, straightforward teachings, actionable tools, steps. It's on an app. It's simple. You can rebuild your health confidently. But there are 2 of them. So if you are still menstruating, choose the still menstruating link. If you are moving into menopause, choose the non-menstruating, or if you're a man, choose the non-menstruating one. Now, if you are still within your menstruating years, but you've had, let's say, an oblation done, or you've had um, a hysterectomy, still choose. You can choose between either. If you still feel like you're cycling, you're just not bleeding, then I would suggest doing the one for cycling. If not, and you feel pretty balanced, I would go for the other one. So, with that said, you already know that I have a support supplement bundle called No Gallbladder Now What? And you can catch up over there getting the supplements or support you need. And for next week's episode, we have No Gallbladder, No Energy, the hidden link to chronic fatigue. So I will see you then. Have a great day.
If this episode encouraged you or offered practical insight, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Leaving a review, subscribing, and sharing with even one friend helps more people discover this message, and Jamie is truly grateful for your support. Be sure to check the show notes for free downloads, helpful resources, and a link to join Jamie's private Facebook group for extra support and community that blends practical health with biblical truth. Just a reminder, Jamie isn't a doctor, so always consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your health plan.